Gaze, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Rainbow Connection podcast. Its continued mission to explore the intersections between queer culture and nerd culture. I'm your host, Allison Hadley, and join me today is Cheyenne.
Hi.
Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, like name, pronouns, any relevant information, and also what drew you to Star Trek initially?
Sure, yeah, hi. Well, first I always introduce myself in my traditional Indigenous language because it's just important to me. So, tanse. Oh, wow, I just about spoke Spanish there. My brain was like, oh, we don't know, speaking Cree today. Cheyenne Mihko Kihêw, Nitsigasan, Egwa Tugs, Nitsigasan, Amisquichi Waskaigen Otsinia. So I'm Cheyenne, or I go by the name Tugs, and I'm from here in Edmonton. And how did I get into Star Trek? I'm like a newbie. I didn't have the experience of growing up with Star Trek. And, you know, I talked to a lot of people like yourself who it's been such an integral part of your existence as especially as an adult person now in this new part of your journey, right? So for me, I didn't have that. My context with Star Trek is a little bit different. I really discovered it during the pandemic. I'd been kind of seeing somebody just before the pandemic, and he was like, "Well, we should watch some Star Trek sometime." And I was like, "Okay, sure, we'll watch some Star Trek."
All right, nerd.
I'm not gonna like this, but you know, you're cute. We'll watch some Star Trek. And I was like, "Okay, TNG kind of slaps. Like, this is okay."
Yeah.
I didn't get into like binging it quite yet, but then you know, the end of the world came, and we all spent all of the time watching all of the things. And I was like, "Well, I guess I'll finish TNG." And after I finished, I was like, you know, that was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed that. What's next? And DS9 came up, and I was hooked. That was game over for me. The moment I started watching DS9, I was like, this is rad. So that was kind of my entry point.
DS9 is kind of banger after banger for a lot of it. Yeah. So, like, one thing I find interesting with Deep Space Nine is I think a lot of trans people say that's their favorite series as well.
Interesting.
And I found specifically with the way I viewed it is with trans femme people specifically, the way I like to describe it, and people just get it. If it's another trans woman who likes Deep Space Nine, they get it. I would say, like, okay, so, you know, Dax is the representation and Kira is the goals. Yeah. And people are like, yes, that obviously makes sense.
Yeah,
and like,
that's so
how
true.
would it be any other way? But actually, I wanted to ask this before. I was going to be part of the intro, but I forgot. So I just say, as a casual intro question, what's your favorite ship? Either like a starship design or like a ship romantically between characters in one of the series.
Okay, so also I didn't say my pronouns. I use they them pronouns.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do one of each.
Please.
So romantic ship, and this is maybe like spoiler for the episode, but like I've always been the ship between Garrick and Bashir. Always. I remember I had an ex-girlfriend one time. I was trying to introduce her to Deep Space Nine. She was watching it on her own, and I get a text message being like, are these two boning, or like what's the deal? And I was like, who are you talking about? And then it was like, sent me a picture of Garrick and Bashir, and I was like, yes, no, but yes. So they're my favorite ship, especially now that it's canon. And then let's see, what's my favorite like ship? Okay, so I'm gonna step outside the Federation. I know, how dare I, especially wearing my uniform. My favorite ships are like either Klingon warbirds or Romulan warbirds because the designs are so unique. Like, I mean, all the ships kind of have something sort of similar. The Federation ships are all very round. I like the like harsh structures of like warbirds. And like the Borg cube, because like how does that have any aerodynamic ability to it at all floating through space? Like, It's
but
a square.
There's no air resistance if there's no air, I suppose.
I guess. Anyway, so not so much about the cubes, more about the warbirds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. I'll go with the Klingon bird of prey, like the one in Star Trek 4. Like,
Okay.
I love like the wings that can go up and down, and I just think it's a really cool design that looks like a bird. It's got a neck. It's got a face. Shoots torpedoes out of its mouth. Like, come on.
Heck yeah. See, now this is where the like expert information comes out a little bit. Because I'm such a newbie, I don't know all my ships. I don't know like the different models and classes and stuff. So you being like, season 4, that one particular, I'm like, yeah, I knew that one. Totally.
Well, that's the thing, and that's a big reason why I wanted you on here is because you came to it a little later. Like it's about different perspectives, and like this is not a gatekeepy place at all. So if I come across like that, please let me know, and I'll step off.
No.
But I like that because my context is that growing up as someone very, very closeted and repressing a lot of things, I was still able to see things and understand things through the lens of Star Trek.
Right.
Whereas you were, like established and you had a better idea of yourself as an adult when you found it, and then you found things to connect within it. So I think that's an interesting dynamic that we've both come at it from different ways to the same fandom.
Totally.
And that's like, I don't have patience for people who gatekeep fandoms in general. Like let people enjoy what they enjoy.
Yeah. Especially in Star Trek where you get all the people who are like, wow, it's so woke now. Like, what happened? Roddenberry would never.
So then we have to the question, when do you think Star Trek went woke?
Oh God, it's just kind of always been woke. I would say, like, again, I haven't watched a lot of TOS. You created that list for me once of like the top TOS episodes that you thought I should watch. I was working my way through that. But there were some episodes in the early TOS where like the misogyny is just so real. So I think once we get out of the original series, I think it starts like towards the end of the original series. Again, having not watched everything in its entirety, but TNG.
I'll get into that.
Yeah, you probably have a better understanding of TOS and where it lies in regards to how diverse it is, or how woke it is. But to me, I think TNG is like right out the gate, it tries its best to be that.
Yeah, I think the way I like to phrase it is, Star Trek is as progressive as it's allowed to be, and there's these ideas, and not all of them go through. Like the initial concept was that the second in command of the Enterprise would be a woman, and the studio's like, no, you're not going to do that.
Heaven forbid we have a woman in a position of leadership.
Exactly. People aren't going to buy that. Like, what kind of weird fantasy world is this?
Your future is crap.
and so there's that. But then they're like, okay, so what can we do? So, World War II is still fresh in people's minds. Let's have a Japanese character. Okay, let's have a black character. They're both on the bridge. Oh, hey, there's a Russian too. We've gotten past our stuff with the Russians.
Right.
And we've there's some sense of racial equity at least. Like even if they didn't go too much into it, like they're all in the same place. And there's a part where in an early episode where Uhura actually goes and like mans the con as well next to Sulu. So there's two people of color in the 60s that are steering and taking over the controls of the ship.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, through today's lens, it's just like, okay, that's neat. But back then, that's revolutionary.
Like, iconic, yeah.
And are you familiar with sort of when Nichelle Nichols, Uhura was going to quit?
A little bit, yeah. But please enlighten us.
Yeah. So with that is, she was a theater actress, and I was like, well, maybe I should leave this and just go back to doing more theater things. And your word got around, and she was talking. She's like, yeah, I think I might leave this show. And she had met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. earlier, and he actually came to the studio and like talked to her there, saying like, what you're doing is so important. It's for Black people in America to see you on screen, and you're not a servant, you're not a slave, you're an integral part of this crew, even if like the writing didn't allow her some of the juicier roles and like not great character development, but it was still a huge leap at the time. And that's why there's still very progressive things, but there's things that's lagging behind it as well. Like a key difference, I'd say, when it comes to especially misogyny and stuff, when you're contrasting original series and say Next Generation, is you get the two male characters that are looked at as being pretty promiscuous. Mm-hmm. So you see, let's say, Kirk and Riker.
Right.
And Riker's supposed to be like, he's got the new kind of Kirk vibes.
Yeah.
But the thing with Riker is, he's kind of a consent king as well. Like when he's talking to someone and it's like, oh, they're not into it, so I'm not into it. I'm not going to press. Like there's always the checking in, and there's always a conscious choice about that. Whereas, in the original one, if someone didn't want to get with Kirk, he'd like grab her by the shoulders and shake her a bit, and then she's like, oh, now that you put it that way.
Let me rip all my clothes off.
Exactly. So but like, and there's always things that I think that people want to do, but the studio or the executives or whoever wouldn't allow it. So it's as progressive as it could be.
Right.
And even it was around about like season 4 of Next Generation that Gene Roddenberry actually said, I think it's time we have like a gay main character like on the bridge. Mm-hmm. And some of the writers said like, oh yeah, what are we gonna have, like Lieutenant Tutti Frutti? It's like, no, like it's like being gay doesn't have to be their entire personality.
Lieutenant Fudgepacker reporting for duty.
Right? Like no, there's no need for that. But then it kept getting blocked and stuff like that, and they try, but there's always other people's hands in there, right? So like they might not have been able to tackle things like misogyny and sexism, and like some of the racial stuff was handled pretty clumsily, to say the least, but they still tried to.
Yeah, like, we had the kiss, right? Yeah, like the kiss is legendary.
Yeah, there's the kiss, and there's the episode where the one race has like one side is white, one side's black.
Yes.
And it's a little on the nose, but then there's things that So it tried at the very least. Whether or not it succeeded all the time, it still tried, and that's kind of cool, and that's kind of aspirational, right? Like,
yeah, I think we gotta maybe I gotta give a little more credit to TOS when you put it that way. Like I just watch it through this modern day lens where I've watched a lot of other Star Trek that just does so much of a more in-depth job. I won't say better, but just like after what you just said, like it's not about comparison. So I think like TOS did the best it could at its time, but we definitely see an improvement as the series and the franchises progress. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's interesting to see, like it is a mirror for the times and where people want to be at the time, right? Yeah. Like it's sort of, we've gotten through whatever this is that is bothering us, whatever's plaguing us as a people, and this is done, and we've worked it out. Mm-hmm. And hey, look at this wonderful utopian society that we've built. All right, so we talked a bit about how sort of progression of progressiveness from TOS to TNG. Also, in the lead up to this episode, we had another guest who was supposed to be here, so sorry you couldn't be with us, Matt. You're here in spirit. And we're going to do your episodes that you pick. So I asked everyone to pick 2 episodes for us to talk specifically about. But I figured we could go through these in sort of series order. And even if there isn't anything from a specific series, we can still sort of touch on it a bit, right?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's say, we've gone through TOS, and no one picked a TOS episode from this one.
Which I'm actually kind of surprised none of us picked the black-white episode. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, I didn't even clock that one.
But we were looking for more queer-themed stuff as well, right? So it's like, it's a good progressive message. Is it specifically like a queer relation message?
Right.
And anyway, so then in Next Generation, Matt had a pick, which was The Outcast from season 5, which, you've watched it recently, right?
Do you want to I watched everything yesterday and this morning so that it was all like very fresh in my head.
Do you want to talk us through The Outcast a bit?
Sure.
Well, I'm here too.
I feel real confident in that.
So confident.
Yeah, I love this episode. When I was rewatching it, I just it brought up a lot of like my initial feelings from when I first watched the episode, especially as like a non-binary person. So essentially, I don't quite remember how they got there, so maybe you can fill in that part. Mm-hmm. But they've encountered this new species. I think it started off that they were already in progress of helping them with something, if I remember correctly. And this little species, they don't have a binary gender. They don't honor gender. They don't use gender. It's actually like criminalized. And if you engage in wanting to be a gender, a man or a woman, because it's that's the only genders we have that we're going to talk about at this time. But essentially you have this whole group of people who just deny gender, which I thought was super cool the first time I watched it. The whole concept of gender being just like eradicated, essentially, but maybe not to the level of like criminalization that it gets to within the episode, where so we see this lovely person. I cannot remember their name. Do you remember their name?
Not offhand. No.
We should have wrote their name down.
Yeah, we should have.
We should have
If
wrote
this
their
was
name
a
down.
podcast for prepared people, we would have done that.
So essentially, as Riker and this individual are working together, Riker and them start to get this. I mean, Riker always gets the vibes with a lot of different people, but a lot of the folks that Riker gets vibes with are very like stereotypically beautiful people. Even the alien races that are just like, they're always a little dolled up. They're high feminine.
You're really traditionally hot and beautiful, but with a couple bumps on your forehead or something.
Yeah, he loves the bumps. He loves the weird things.
Yeah.
But this race is all very, because they're gender neutral, they're a very androgynous looking race. And so I always thought that was pretty cool that as they're working together, they start connecting. And it's through their work together that they realize, oh, wow, like there's attraction here. But she, like, I'll use she, her pronouns for her. Soren, that's her name. Thank you. So Soren is really curious about the experience of being a human and what kind of sexuality there is and how are your mating rituals, and just dropping this so casually in a conversation. And
Riker's getting all flustered in the shuttlecraft.
They're in the shuttlecraft and he's like, you can see it on his face. We don't typically talk about stuff like that. You know, it's weird to see Riker being a little more like reserved.
Yeah.
But I think that speaks to the kind of connection that they had. It wasn't so much just about boning with him, which oftentimes it can be. But in this one, it really felt like it was like they did fall in love. And Riker even says it in the episode. I love her. So anyways, I digress. I'm going too far ahead into the episode. But as they are connecting and she reveals that there's people within her home planet that actually believe in gender and that they start to explore their genders, but they have to do it secretively behind closed doors. Very, similar to how a lot of our community have to do when they're wanting to explore their own trans journey. Just maybe reverse, right? So they're wanting gender, they're wanting to be men, they're wanting to be women, and they're wanting to feel like what a man or a woman feels like and engage in those things and experience love, because love is also not really part of their practices as a species. Their mating rituals are not so much with each other so much as with a husk. And so they impregnate their husk. So there's no level of intimacy within this race. And
which is why Soren was so curious about it as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the idea that intimacy and gender are connected was a little bit of a trope to me. I think you can be genderless and still be a sexual person, but for the context of the episode, it made sense. So then it's revealed that she wants to be a woman. She knows she's a woman. She's this gorgeous trans woman, because essentially that's what she is. They're not.
It's not the gender assigned. There was no gender assigned.
There's no
so
gender
any
assigned.
gender is trans.
And so, which I think is just, again, speaks volumes to Riker, and that he has this like openness about him. And as you said, he's not that creep who's like, you don't want me? Come here, girl. He's not like that.
I hate that voice that you just did.
Yeah, I also hate that voice. Like, I cringed a little bit inside. Anyways, they are connecting and they share a lovely kiss, and they are very much falling for each other when her counterparts, her leaders within the species, I don't remember even what the species name is. I'm terrible at this.
No, you're doing great. Keep
I'm such a
going.
newbie. So she gets arrested for exploring this intimacy with Riker, because that's not allowed. And they have essentially conversion practices within their species. And so that's where they find themselves in court and having to talk about gender within a like criminal context, which is kind of weird. And ultimately, despite Riker's pleas and despite her very impassioned speech, which I thought her speech was incredible. It gave me chills hearing her talk about the beauty and that she wants and how she's finding herself. And then they're basically like, no, go F yourself. We're converting you. And so they take her away. And the next time he sees her,
he's like, let's run away. And then they're like,
she does not remember. She's there. Yeah, at this point, we're back to they, them.
Yeah.
Because now she's no longer a woman. So they no longer want to pursue that. And, Riker was willing to break the Prime directive for this. He was willing to put everything on the line for them.
Yeah, dude was all in.
He was in. They won his heart. Like, Picard, I love them. Yeah.
And like, it was, a way that I find good science fiction, and Star Trek does this well quite often, is that, kind of recontextualizing something, not in as obvious a way as the black on one side and the white on the other side, but like, this is, even though they're having, a non-binary species and someone wants gender, it's like still kind of the lens of, just the trans experience in general. But if we say, oh, this is an alien thing, and they don't have genders, and that we sort of like more like cishet people watching and be like, oh, how can they not have genders? That's ridiculous. So they can kind of get some of the message there. But it's a way to sort of recontextualize that in a way that might be more accessible to people who aren't as like versed as you or I, right?
Right. A little more digestible for people who have no exposure to the trans experience, right?
Yeah, it's a little more science fiction-y, so they can be like, oh, well, that's just a space thing. I don't get it. But then me watching this as a child, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. See, and again, I don't have that context. Yeah. So I wasn't like, I think when I first watched DS9, I was just coming to terms with the fact that I was trans. I was already identifying as two-spirit. I was already using she, her, they, them pronouns. But I felt like trans wasn't something that I could take claim to. Like, I wasn't trans enough. I don't want to physically transition. I wanted to socially transition. I wanted to, maybe even legally transition. But I didn't want to physically transition. And so the like colonized part of my brain was like, you're not trans enough. And so I think like in my early experience of trying to discover that gender, episodes from Star Trek did kind of help in contextualizing feelings that I already had or had already explored. I'm not a child, exploring it for the first time, but it's still relevant.
But that's the thing, is it's similar experiences, but you have a little more maturity and experience, and you can contextualize that a little bit. Like, whereas if I'm watching as a child, it might just be a vague feeling that I sort out years from later, and it's like, oh, I see what was happening there, right?
Yeah, like, and then we find some therapy to help us process that.
Absolutely, then we work it out. So there's a couple episodes that I thought of doing for Next Generation, and a lot of these depends on how you read into them. Like, some of them can be kind of queer, that are not overtly queer. Okay. And there's ones that are a little more overt. Like, one that I wanted to draw attention to would be The Offspring.
Okay.
The one where Data creates a child.
Yes, yeah.
And again, it's a little clumsy in parts. Like, it's still like, it's cool that he's allowing his child to choose their species and gender. But then but then there is also sort of the problematic part of when it's like, oh, if you choose human female, then that means you'll have relations with a human male probably, and it's still kind of like railroading you into a sexuality. It's like you have freedom of gender but of nothing else. So it's like, here's the things that you do, and I think it was Troy that was doing a lot of the, well, this is what you do. If this is what you pick, this is how you do it. So it's still not great, but it's an interesting idea, and you can take the bits of that and put it in the context of like 1991 or whenever that episode aired. Right. I'm sure some nerd will correct us in the thing, and I say that with love because I'm a nerd myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they'll be correcting me all over the place on this episode, and it's okay. I'm here for it. Happy to be corrected.
and so. I'll go. We'll split up Matt's episodes because there was actually the next one is a Matt pick as well.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, but before that, I want to say that there is some context with a Next Generation episode called The Host.
Ah, yes.
Which is the first episode that we meet the Trill.
Yes. Yep.
And for those who don't know, the Trill are a species that have like a symbiotic relationship with essentially this giant bug that lives in them, and there's a host body, and the giant bug carries all the experience from past lives, and it's a whole thing. It's a cool thing, and it's very much a trans allegory in a lot of ways.
Very much, yeah, well, 100%.
And so in this episode, because we're going to talk about Rejoined next, but in this one, Dr. Crusher falls for a Trill ambassador, and this is before the Trill redesign, because in this episode, Trill have weird forehead things as opposed to the spots that we know them to have.
Yeah.
And so then he dies, and temporarily is placed into Riker's body.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
And Riker, the Riker body with this Trill is still like, hey Bev, what's going on? Like, why aren't we going on any dates anymore? And
yeah, and she just got the ick.
She's like, you're my bro. We're not going on a date. But then, it starts like breaking down his body and stuff like that. It's like, okay, no, we need to find a Trill host. So then they send a new Trill host, and the new Trill host is a woman. Mm-hmm. And then the Trill again after they are implanted into the new host, sort of checks in with Bev, and Bev's like, nah, I can't do that. Like so straight people exist, straight people are valid.
Yes,
but
yes.
It was just really blunt, and the way she phrased it, she's like, maybe one day we'll be evolved enough to look past this sort of thing, and it's like,
which you would hope at that point in the future, we're that far ahead. We have abolished poverty. They are like, people have food. We don't have food scarcity anymore, but we still have homophobia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's like, if that's, yeah. Regardless, I'm like, I rewatched that. I'm like, all right, that's where this episode went.
Right. Yeah. So much potential, wasted potential.
So then contrasting that would be an episode of Deep Space Nine called Rejoined from season 4.
One of the, like, again, iconic episodes, most iconic.
Yes,
Sapphic
yes.
power.
Yeah. It's one of those sort of, it's not, they got away with it. Like, there were people in charge of Star Trek who didn't like any sort of queer storylines or anything like that and tried to shoot it down. So this is one of the acceptable ones that they could slip through because there's like a little asterisk on it. It's like, don't worry, it's not actually gay.
It's fine.
You need to understand the context here. It's not gay. It's okay. It is so. There's a Trill main cast member, Jadzia Dax, and she is visited by a former spouse who is now also in a new body, and they're both female bodies. And there's rules that you can't interact with old spouses and stuff like that, which is
like so draconian. But
it is like, it's so whack. Like, why? I don't know. I'm sure there's probably just one person who did it and screwed everything up for everyone, because like, it doesn't make sense. Like, that's the thing is, they say that you can't like rejoin with an old partner and stuff like that, but you can hang out with old friends, like, because like Jadzia's previous host Curzon was friends with Sisko, and like Curzon's friends pop up all the time.
Yes,
and
all
like,
the time.
okay, so why can't it be romantic partners? Like, that's a little.
Well, we do see a little, and it's again maybe a spoiler alert for one of my other episodes that we're going to talk about from Discovery, but like that whole storyline gets a little murky because you have Gray, who's also a Trill. But I guess maybe because Adira's not a Trill, it's acceptable that they reconnect. That's the only way I think I can contextualize that.
No, it's I don't know. At the same time, like, as much as the canon exists and people know all this stuff and all these connections, like, they're still just writing as they go along. They have different writers for several episodes and stuff like that. So sometimes it's probably like, we'll figure that out later. And then they just did or did not, right? Depending on what it is. One thing I really liked about this episode is when Dax's old spouse comes on board, is Kira's reaction. And like, she is talking, and I forget who she's talking with at this point. I think it was Sisko. Like Dax tells Sisko, like, oh yeah, we can't do this. We can't be around each other because we used to be joined. And then so like,
I think it's actually the other way. I think it's actually Sisko giving Dax trouble.
Well, yeah, no, like that's the first talk.
Yeah.
And then after that, like, Sisko goes to Kira and sort of fills her in, and she's like, what's the big deal? Why can't they just be together? Yeah. And just like the Kira being a hashtag ally, right? like I don't see any reason, like, doesn't matter what what their sexualities are supposed to be or whatever, or like on TV in the 90s it wasn't a popular thing to have like a same-sex couple, but Kira's just like, why aren't they just together? Like, they love each other. They
still love each other.
These two women love each other, and why can't they be together? And this rule sucks.
Yeah. Like, and everybody can see it. We all are watching it, knowing these two are so in love with each other.
There's so much electricity between these two whenever
from
they're
the moment they touch eyes, like that initial eye contact when the one guy steps aside, and it's just this moment where you're like, ooh, that was electric.
Like every scene that they're in together, right? And then there's the kiss, which
I just got shivers. The sapphic kiss.
Do you want to talk about the kiss though?
You're doing a great job. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Anyways, there's an amazing sapphic kiss between the two former spouses that they were joined a couple of lives ago, and they were reuniting, and
they spend the episode kind of toying with each other of like, oh no, we're just hanging out. Poor Bashir gets invited to the dinner, and he's just off to the side being like, he's just a good wingman.
Yeah, he's trying to chaperone.
He's doing the best he can. But I think the build up to the kiss was so well handled.
There's so much of like the sapphic longing, right?
Yes.
And it's. Yeah, if it was in like a different timepiece, I'd be like yearning from a lighthouse.
That's a good way to put it.
and like that sort of thing. And like it's so when you watch it, like I don't think I was as familiar with like queer baiting in film and TV when I watched it as a younger person. But now I could see if someone was watching that newer, it's like, this isn't going to pay off because there's so many times where you hint at a queer thing and then you take it away before there's any payoff.
Yeah.
And so it was really looking that way. And then they gave us a bit of payoff, then no.
Yeah.
But we had that moment, and everyone loves that moment.
Yeah, and it, like I said, it was electric. It was passionate. It was, I'm sure, a little bit like, I'm trying to think of what year that episode would have aired specifically, but it's in the 90s.
It's like mid-90s.
It's like mid-90s, I would say, given where it is in the series timeline. It's a time where we're seeing more pride movements. We're seeing more, like, it's the early days, the early whisperings. And I like to think that shows like this had an impact on that movement forward. One Little Kiss, but aired nationally, for the whole world to see, two women, like, being intimate with each other. I think that stuff like that really plays a big part in how we consume media and how it impacts just our day-to-day life. And, like, I wish I would have saw that for the first time as a young person who is like, oh, I'm bi, I'm pansexual now, but I didn't really understand what that meant when I was younger and what it meant to like be interested in something outside of the heteronormative kind of, you should be attracted to men because you're a woman. And so I think the first time I saw that kiss, woo, we all got a little bit sweaty, but it just like, it almost left me with a little bit of longing, like not that kind of longing, but like longing for that, like, again, like I say, being able to have seen that at a more pivotal time in my life where maybe I needed that of like, it's okay to explore this. It's okay to be queer. Look, it's on national television. You can kiss women too. It's fine. Go get it.
And I think an interesting thing for like context there is a lot of, if there's any queer intimacy on screen, it was usually played from an exploitive angle as well. It was like
fetishist angle.
It's like, let's get these hot chicks out here to make out. Like you wouldn't get men kissing each other or anything, but you get like
spring break vibes. Like
exactly. So it's like, and like, yes, they're still two very attractive women, but but there was like emotion and heart at it, and there's a connection, and there was a build, and there was a
handled
story.
really beautifulutely in that regard.
It was handled, I think, exceptionally well especially for the time.
Yeah, it wasn't just like two, for lack of a better term, like slutty officers on the bridge scissoring, like it was handled so beautifully and so ethically. And there's like the moral dilemma that they had, I think is just like, it's just a really beautiful allegory for what many people experience.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like sort of the consequences of, rejoining with an old partner kind of mirror like the consequences of coming out potentially for a lot of people, right? Like that's where you can kind of recontextualize again. That's like, okay, there's consequences for us doing this.
Are we going to be roommates forever, or are we going to actually...
They were close friends and they got buried holding hands together. What a good pal.
Yeah.
So I like, we can see if there's anything else we want to do for Deep Space Nine outside of Garrick and Bashir, because we'll talk that before Fisher
I was just going to say, we cannot just get out of Deep Space Nine without talking about them.
We'll come back. So we're trying to do this like vaguely chronologically.
Right, yes.
So is there anything else that you want to go into for Deep Space Nine?
I just had a total blank. as soon as you asked. I don't know. I'm not thinking of anything right off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we can come back to that if it happens.
Okay.
So then let's move on to Voyager.
Okay.
Which another series, just because there's so many series, no one had a Voyager one on their list.
Yeah, it was again surprising.
But we can talk some broad themes in there. Like there is. I know a lot of people that like 7 of 9 was a bit of a sapphic awakening for them, or when you see Janeway in the kind of the alien themed episode when she's down to like the tank top, she's got the phaser rifle and just being like taking charge and like that really worked for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on either 7 or Janeway or any other sort of queer-ish themes from Voyager? Or?
Yeah. I mean, again, having been like a mature adult, quote unquote mature adult watching this, my awakening wasn't the same, obviously. But as somebody who, like, again, like I was saying earlier, didn't always feel like I was welcome in my queerness or like I was like queer enough or trans enough, it's affirming to me that the feelings that I had were shared by other people, if that makes sense. I think 7 of 9 just gets so fetishized just throughout the series. I like that the sapphics still felt drawn to her, connected to her, even though she was very straight-coded. They tried to connect her with different people there. I remember when Harry Kim was having naughty dreams about her for a while there. Poor Kim, it was never going to work out.
No.
It was never going to work out.
But Kim never picked the wrong person to fall for. You never picked the right person to fall for.
Never picked the right person.
Like, you are the exact wrong people, my dude.
Yeah. I mean, relatable.
Yeah. Maybe that's why he's a forever ensign.
Maybe, yeah. I guess with Janeway, I just like always get stuck on this stupid episode with Chakotay, when they get stranded and they have their little, there's all this tension. That's where I get stuck on Voyager with Janeway. To me, it was very like hetero-coded in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, like she didn't give off a lot of queer vibes, but it was just like
she's hot.
But for people, it's like, a hot woman in charge doing hot things.
Yeah,
and that helps.
Yes, that helps. And like even though it's like progressive in a different way, right? Like it's maybe we're not talking about gender or sexuality, but in a way we are still talking about gender.
Yeah.
If you have a woman who's holding this position of leadership, she commands a starship, she's commanding her team, she makes some pretty intense decisions, and she really has to wrestle with her morality in a lot of the episodes.
Which is not a place that female characters are put into often,
are
right?
usually not, right? And we're like downplayed or again fetishized. I'm saying we're as if I'm a woman, but like as an AFAB person, that's still a representation for me when I watch the show, because I was socialized as a girl, as a woman when I was younger. So trying to step out of that zone, like I misgender myself all the time. And I lost my train of thought, so I'll just end it there.
Yeah, like, and I think an important thing I find interesting with 7 of 9 is there was, a showrunner in Star Trek at the time that every show has to have like a hot woman in a cat suit.
I was going to say in something super tight, so you just see every fold.
Exactly, and I think she was able to, through strength of her performance, kind of evolve beyond that. But I think a cool thing with 7 is that she's also discovering her humanity, but also at the same time discovering her womanhood.
Yes.
And that's the thing is, so there's that journey. So it's relatable to trans femme people discovering the side that they've locked away, or for for queer women who think it's there's a lot of stigma that like, I can't be too femme if I have to be super butch coded if I'm a lesbian, or like it's a lot of internal stuff that a lot of different people in the community go through. And 7 was kind of a mirror you could look at that journey through, saying like this person is figuring everything out from scratch because they were a child, then they were a Borg, and now who are they?
Yeah, I really like that perspective. I think that journey of what even is womanhood, or what is manhood, what is non-binary hood.
Yeah.
Is that a new term? Did I just come up with something?
Yeah, sure.
I think that like that's a great I know I don't think I ever looked at it in that regard. Like, so I think conversations like this are always fun to have because we can look at the same show through different lenses and to be able to have discussions and realize, oh wow, okay, so this is your perspective on the exact same thing that I'm watching. Even as a trans person, your trans experience is not the same as mine.
No.
And I love that you can relate to 7 of 9 that way, and like getting to see what womanhood could be for Allie, right? Where's Allie's hot cat suit? Ooh, add that to the notes. Christmas present. But like, you don't need a hot cat suit to be a woman.
No.
Right? And I think for her, she was trying to explore like what that actually looked like. The Borg.
But in a hot cat suit.
In a hot cat suit. And I guess in the way like the Borg are genderless as well, right? Like it's not really anything that's addressed, I don't think.
No, I think that they mention that they're kind of without gender when they're Borg. And that's the thing is, so it's like...
Unless you're talking about the Borg queen.
Yeah,
like she's high femme.
Yeah, but like the Borg, like 7 as a Borg grew into adulthood with no concept of gender.
Right.
And now it's just like placed in a gendered body. Right. Like it's not a choice or anything, but here, have your gendered body, figure it out.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting if you think of like, not to take it down this route, but if you think colonization and settlers arriving here in Canada and they see Two-Spirit people and they're like, what the heck is that? Why is that person who's a man wearing a dress? And why is that person who's a woman hunting with the men? You know? And we get assimilated into being a man or a woman. Whereas the Borg are like, are they progressive? They're being assimilated into a genderless existence, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a different type of indoctrination. It's like, yeah.
I don't know, the Borg got so woke.
The Borg are so woke. They're just like assimilating.
Yeah, so, okay, let's go on to the much maligned Enterprise that a lot of people skip parts of or even forget that it exists.
Yes.
But it had its high points and like had, I believe, the catsuit lady in Enterprise actually was able to kind of redeem herself a little later on through also again Fisher Quest as well.
Right.
Was able to come back and kind of evolve beyond the hey, here's a hot lady in the cat suit on the bridge.
Yeah, who gets with the white man, stereotypical.
Well, whatever. Like, but she at least got to come back and do something about it.
Yes,
and kind of change the legacy a bit, which was nice.
Yeah. I also love that she acknowledged how difficult it was to be married to Trip.
Yes, that was fun. And like, because like Enterprise, felt like they're trying to make it sexy, right?
Yes.
And that's why they're like, oh, now everyone's going to rub this goo all of themselves into the blue light to decontaminate themselves. And there's every episode had like 5 minutes of the cast members rubbing goo on each other. And it was, it's like, it was so blatant at the time, but like, no, it's science. Don't worry about it.
It's good. Trust us.
Yeah, the guy from Quantum Leap is like rubbing goo on an elf. Don't think about it too much.
Yeah. Suspension of disbelief.
but there were some good episodes that I think warranted consideration from that as well. Like there's an episode where Trip, who's like the southern engineer guy who usually gets into all the hijinks and stuff like that. Like there's an episode where he gets pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's a surprise to him.
Yes.
Because that he has relationships and then his physiology starts changing and he's like, well, what's happening?
Which is like I remember like watching that episode and being like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, you were having the Trip experience yourself.
Yeah, Trip is an experience.
Yeah.
The Trip.
Yeah, and so on that, there's the other one that was under consideration, and Matt and I were talking about potentially doing this episode. It's an episode called The Progenitor.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there's a species where there are actually 3 genders.
Yes.
And so there's male, female, and progenitor. And the thing about the progenitor is they're needed for like the procreation process.
Right.
But beyond that, they're not allowed to go to school. They don't really have names or anything. Like
I forgot about that episode. Yeah.
They're basically like a prop for creating children.
Yeah, they're just like a shell.
Exactly.
Like surrogate shells, basically.
Yeah, and then Trip finds out like, no, I think there's more to these progenitors. Like I think they're actually like their own life forms, and they're as smart as anyone else in the species. And so he takes it upon himself to teach the progenitor how to read and how to, reason and do these things and want things for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately doesn't end very well because like that comes the whole thing is like, you shouldn't be meddling in, cultural practices, and you shouldn't.
The Prime Directive exists for a reason.
For a reason, absolutely. and like it's the first time that like for like 3 seasons Trip has just been messing around and having good times and nothing bad happens to Trip. And this is like the first time he meets with like some sparkling consequences.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh geez, I just kind of ended things for this person."
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's a downer of an episode. It really, that's why I'm like, I don't want to dig in too much to it, but it's like, it was heavy, and it was, so gender was a focus in it, but in an interesting way, I think, and didn't especially resonate with me, but I'm like, it's an interesting talking point, and it's interesting that a series that was supposed to be kind of like the sexy Star Trek kind of went there.
The sexy Star Trek.
They're all sexy Star Trek.
Enterprise is the sexy Star Trek is just like I just can't with that statement.
No, there's too many white dudes in it.
Way too many white dudes. Yeah.
Like, you're not selling this on
No.
Okay, so then there was a bit of a gap. Mm-hmm. And then they tried to bring it back with the J.J. Abrams movies.
Yes.
Which a lot of my friends and I just refer to as straight Trek.
Yes.
Because it's very straight code. It's like, this is an action movie, and it's for bros, but it's in space.
Yeah, this is like Top Gun Space Edition.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. But they happened. They were a thing.
They were a thing.
There was a lot of lens flares.
Yes, yeah.
And it's the first time I'm like, why are you giving the franchise to J.J. Abrams? But
nobody knows.
Whatever. Don't ask me. I'm not Star Trek. But and then after that, okay, so then after a long wait, we get back to Star Trek TV.
Yes.
And then we come to Discovery.
Yeah, I love Discovery.
Yeah.
As a queer person, queer and trans person, non-binary person, the representation of Discovery, like, I'm emotional just thinking about it.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, there goes crying, always crying. Like, that was like the goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, we wanted to see that, even as someone who just like is new to loving Star Trek. I think like as a queer trans person watching Discovery for the first time and realizing that it was intentionally brought into the show, right? Like the writing, the character development, the arcs that the characters go through, and like pronouns. Like, it's the first time we really like intentionally, I don't think, maybe not the first time, but they, them pronouns are really, really intentionally utilized within the show. But it's not like they don't make a big show of these things. They introduce these concepts, they introduce these characters, they use the storylines, but it's not done in a fetishy way. It's not done in a like gross,
or like, look how weird this is.
No, it's done in a normalizing way.
Yeah.
They're just like, they're introducing these really important topics, and they're introducing these really integral characters to the series, and they're doing it in a beautiful way, which I resonated with Discovery really hard. That's why I had to choose an episode from Discovery, because we start to see queerness become canon, right? And like, I think that's gorgeous. I think it's beautiful, and that's what Star Trek really needed. We needed to be able to say, no, it's not just queer coded. No, these characters are like gay for each other.
We finally get Roddenberry's desire for queer crew members that are, more than just, this is a gay person. Yeah. What do? They do gay.
Yeah. And we see family building.
Yes.
And that's not something that we experience in trans representation in TV. Family building, I think, for a lot of trans folks, like, feels so far away. It feels unattainable with the rhetoric that we're like dirty groomers, we're, PDF files. Like, when we have that kind of rhetoric imposed on us, it's hard to want to navigate systems that are based on that hatred. Mm-hmm. And like, let's be real, adoption processes are not kind to trans people.
No.
They're not quite. They're maybe a little kinder now to queer people, but to trans people, I know lots of folks who are wanting to build families and struggling. So seeing this chosen family, right? Like, seeing them accept these cuties as their kids, like, Adira gets the family that they needed. And,
Mm-hmm.
we see, oh my gosh, I just blanked on their names.
Culver and Stamets?
Yes,
or?
thank you. Yeah. Memory retention and recall isn't super great sometimes. Thanks, ADHD. But I think just like the idea of like family building being an integral part of the storyline, and having these queer people just existing and building their lives together was a beautiful step forward for the whole franchise. And I think it was the direction that we needed.
Yeah, like one thing I liked about Discovery is, I don't know if I was crazy about like the season-long story arcs. Like, I kind of like the episodic where like, oh, here's something really heavy. Now let's lighten it up with a fun body swap episode or a time travel one, but it was like the mood was very consistent, and it was good and bad. It felt a little. That's the only thing that kind of felt a little
I'll
off
give
for me.
that.
But I did like that. It felt like every season it got queerer. Like it's like you see
the first season not so much, I guess.
But still, the first season you have the chief medical officer and the chief engineer are both men and that are married to each other. So that's still pretty gay. And it's just thrown in like
so
casual. It's like, oh yeah, my husband's coming over. Oh, it's the engineer. The engineer's your husband. Okay.
Yeah,
like,
and it's just it's not done in this weird icky way.
No one's weird about it.
Yeah.
But then second season, Tig Notoro's here now.
Yeah, which,
right.
Yeah, we all love Tig. We love Tig in this house.
Oh yes, and then season 3, then non-binary characters.
Yeah.
And then they get into like a little found family with the engineer and the doctor,
Yeah.
and it's like the cutest, most wholesome thing. The way they all look out for each other, and they all grow and learn together, and it's just a really special, really magical thing to see on TV.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, hopefully we don't have to wait a few hundred years.
But
yeah. So so that brings us to your first episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So
do you want to walk us through Forget Me Not from season 3?
Yeah. So this is where we actually first meet Adira, and where we first meet Gray, and where we start to get into the like non-binary representation within Discovery. Again, I'm having a blank moment where I'm like, how does that episode start again? I just watched it this morning. Essentially, Adira, we don't actually know quite what happened to them at the beginning. We get that a little later in the episode, but Adira essentially is the host to a symbiont, but Adira is a human, and they encounter the Discovery crew. I'm butchering this. Nerds are going to tear me apart in the comments. I can hear it now.
Our nerds are gentle nerds.
Yeah, be gentle with me. Essentially, in the episode, we see Adira travel back to the Trill planet to be able to understand more about this symbiont and to get the memories back. There's no memories. She's not. They're not actually. She still uses she/her at this point in the series,
but not able to do the recall like Dax could.
Yeah, not able to do the recall, and so have to go to Trill to be able to enter into the pool. I can't remember the name of the pool. Go into the magical cave.
Yeah, the
where
glowy
they can
waters.
connect. Yeah, the glowy waters with the bouncy things.
Yeah.
Such a great nerd.
Glowy waters, bouncy things. Got it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But essentially, it's through going through the process that Trills normally go through to connect with their previous hosts in this pool that we learn how they actually came to have the symbiont. And that's where we start to see their love story with Gray. And I just love Gray so much. Gray's one of my favorite characters. They're so cute.
They're so cute.
They're so
Like, come
cute.
on.
And to have trans mask representation in Star Trek. I'm not so much masculine of center these days, but in the last couple of years, I was very butch, very like I'm in my feminine era, non-binary realness over here. But I remember watching Gray for the first time and being like, this is fucking dope. Like I love this. Like that. Like this. That's a T-boy.
Yeah.
We have a T-boy in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, to me, that's just wonderful. And so we see their love story start to develop, and that's where we get the memory that they had this accident, and Gray was injured, and the symbiont needed to be transferred into Adira. And, we think we've lost Gray at this point. And they're able to connect in the pools, and, Adira gets all of the memories back and gets all the skills just like you do when you get to become a host, and eventually decides to go back to Discovery. And it's at the end of the episode that we see they still have this connection to Gray, which is very unusual. Typically, you don't see your past host, and that's where the episode kind of leaves us. So I love this episode because it's not outwardly in your face like, hey, these are trans characters, these are non-binary characters. It's a little bit of a queer love story. You can tell
and
that there's some
being trans
queerness
or
there.
non-binary doesn't actually come into the equation. Like it's not something that they mention.
It's
just
not
like this is your
forefront.
love. And
that's just the love.
This is the person that you love, and this is what happened to them.
Yeah. And them like discovering the love because of the loss of memories and remembering that was their person. Oh, I could have just died. And when they let go of them I love that episode so much. I think the introduction to those two characters was handled in a very graceful way.
And that's the thing where it's like, yeah, like they said earlier, you don't need to have Lieutenant Tutti Frutti. Like you can just tell a love story where they happen to be queer.
Yeah.
And that's when it's just amazing, right?
Yeah. And it's through the course of the series, we see them develop a family. Gray's character is able to come back. I won't give any spoilers. I'm sure I'm just ruining it for somebody. It's like, I haven't even watched Discovery yet. I shouldn't watch this episode.
But it's really gay. Watch it.
It's really gay. Like, watch it. So I think just the idea again of like family building, handling non-binary representation, seeing Pike use they them pronouns and it just casual. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just how they refer to them. And I think there's an episode where Adira actually like changes the pronouns. Maybe
actually said that. Actually, no, I don't think I like those anymore.
Yeah,
and there's, but it's not a big deal. And I was like, oh, let's plan the parade, or there's
they're like, oh my God, you're a whole new
now.
person. I just can't get this right. And, it's so hard.
It was just like different pronouns, please. And everyone's like, okay, dope, let's do that.
Yeah, awesome, great. And at that point in Discovery, we've jumped a lot ahead in the future, right? So I think that, again, speaks to like where the world is, where the universe is in regards to homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, right? Like Discovery's set much farther into the future at that point. And I think it's a little more hopeful.
It's like, at the core of, Roddenberry's message when people are saying, like, that's not Roddenberry's vision, is like, above all, his vision was like hope that we're going to get through this, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really well reflected there.
Yeah. And I think it's through Discovery, and I think it was maybe the DS9 episode. There's like overtones of mental health starting to be brought in as well, of like the unique perspective of what it is to have these issues as a queer or trans person, and how mental health kind of plays into a role in that. It's not handled overtly in a queer way all the time. There's different episodes that handle mental health in different ways. But I think we see it a little more in Discovery.
Yeah, like there are episodes of Deep Space Nine that are definitely like mental health focused. Yeah. But yeah, even in Forget Me Not, they're talking about, like, because they jumped forward into the future and they realized that like everyone they know is dead and like everything they knew is gone and there's no Federation anymore, and like they're grappling with a lot of really heavy topics, and that affects people in different ways, and people lash out, and like so it's healing and rebuilding yourself after trauma, which is also just a really powerful story arc, as well as you get to see these people kind of get back into themselves.
Yeah, and into themselves in maybe a new way, right? Yeah. Like seeing Adira discover themselves through the show, like, again, it just brings tears to my eyes.
On that one of my favorite stories from Discovery is actually Emily Coots, who played Lieutenant Detmer, actually came out during the show because it was just such a queer show and there's so much acceptance and love that she actually sort of was able to do some inward looking and be like, oh, geez, I'm actually gay.
Oh, I didn't know that. So there I go crying again. Oh, that's gorgeous.
So she actually came out because she was on Discovery.
Oh, I love that. And I love her. She's a great actress.
I know. It's just so wonderful, and I love that story so
thank
much.
you for sharing. That's great. Yeah, I love that.
So, moving along, we got have to keep pace here.
Yeah, sorry.
So, I don't know. I think we've already touched on a lot of some of the older ones I was thinking of doing, but I want to hype up Strange New Worlds a bit. So both of my picks are Strange New Worlds.
Yes, yeah. I was actually okay.
Because like I think it's a great show. Like right now I'd say Deep Space Nine is my favorite series, but if Strange New Worlds keeps up this pace, it will be Strange New Worlds. And I think it's also one of those things that there are queer plots and points in it, but it's not like, hey, look, here's a queer thing that's happening. It's something's happening to a queer person.
Right. Yeah.
And like that's fine.
Yeah.
Like there is the first episode I would like to talk about is The Serene Squall, which is from season 1. And first up, so there is a non-binary guest star, and they immediately, no one misgenders them at all. Like it's everything is they them pronouns. There's not a no, I'm a they them. Like
Yeah, and I
just
missed up my words a little bit earlier. That's like I was mixing up my episodes, but yes, yeah.
It was really nice to see, and if I'm not mistaken, it was actually directed by a non-binary Navajo person.
Okay, I didn't know that either.
And so that's some interesting like context and where it's coming from, and that's why I think it was handled so well.
Yeah.
Like it was just like
we won't talk about Indigenous represent. That's a whole other podcast.
Ooh, yeah. There's some. I have some thoughts on that.
I have lots of thoughts, but that's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast, and hopefully we can do that sometime. But like, well, I don't need to have a voice in that, but I hope it gets done. There's a bit where Captain Angel is talking to Spock because Spock's trying to wrestle with being half human, half Vulcan.
Right. Yep.
And they're like, "What if you're neither of those things?" What if you're something completely different? And Spock does not understand this.
Yeah,
He does not compute what's happening.
Illogical.
But it's just like, but it just poses like, what if you were your own thing?
Yeah.
And it's a really great conversation, an interesting moment, and you can tell Spock's giving it a thought, and that's where he starts being okay with letting some more human aspects come out and stuff like that. But he's not trying to lock himself in that Vulcan box necessarily as much as he was before.
Yeah.
And like I think it's cool also to show that like the overtly queer character can be complicated and interesting, and it's kind of cool to be the villain. Like
I was just gonna say it's the first time we see like. Is it I think it's the first time we see like a queer-coded villain.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole franchise.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Which is good because then it's not like it's okay to be a villain in this regard, but we're not villainized throughout the whole franchise.
Exactly.
Right? It's not the same.
It's not a conclusion that this is a queer person.
It's
so
not
they must
because
be
they're that identity that they're a villain. They're just a villain that happens to be that identity, right? Which is different.
Exactly. And it's just because there is a lot of tendency in television and movies to, if you have a queer character, they have to have like a tragic story. Or
of course.
Or they're a plot device, or they're any number of other things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, no, this is just a complicated person. Maybe you don't want to come across them because they're going to steal your ship and mess you up. But hey, they're diversity. That's a diversity win.
And they're really good at doing what they do.
Yeah. No, so I really like that episode, and that's why I wanted to talk about that. And like, it's just also, not skipping a beat with the pronouns, and like, I think that was a nice one. Like, even when they are like cursing their name and like say like taking control of the ship, and like they don't like dead name or dead gender, because they have an assumed name at first as well.
Yes, they do.
And like, no, this is Angel, they them pronouns.
Yeah.
We hate Angel, they them pronouns.
It's a mutual hatred for them.
It's like, get it right. This is the person who we hate.
Yeah.
And we're going to defeat Angel, they, them pronouns.
Yeah, again, it's not the focus. It's not meant to be this big, like, oh, it's a non-binary person that has stolen our ship. Like, it's not an integral part of the story,
and
but it's like, it is and it isn't. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, well, that's the thing, is we just want to steal starships and not have our gender be a big deal. Like, I think that's a reasonable thing, right?
We all just want to be hot non-binary pirates. I was actually so
hot.
Tempted to try to do her makeup for this, but I was like, I would have had to start that so early. All those tiny little circles.
It's so intricate, but it's so great.
Intricate.
Like,
yeah. Maybe I'll get a stencil made, because I was just like, I want to be this hot non-binary pirate. I want their whole outfit. I want them.
All the outfits are good. Even like their workout outfit, like amazing. Like
their workout outfit was so hot.
Yeah, like.
And I would love to know more about that actor or actress, however they identify. Who is that person? Like, they're hot.
Other than hot, there's got to be more going on there.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, okay, so and then the next one is another one that's not overtly queer, but has such overtones.
Yes, yeah.
It's from season 2, Ad Astra per Aspera, which is the one where first in command, Una, is on trial for being genetically augmented.
Right.
Which, for her species, is a cultural practice. Yeah. So it's like when you're born, you get these modifications that help you survive in the world and exist because you're in an inhospitable place. And, the Federation has rules against genetic augmentations. Mm-hmm. And I one of my favorite types of episodes in Star Trek, because I love court episodes.
Yes, I'm a sucker for the court episodes. I mean, one of mine was a court episode as well, right?
Like that's the one. It's like, is Data a sentient being or is he property?
That's one of my all-time favorite episodes.
It's such Measure of a Man is such a classic episode, but I think I like this one more than Measure of a Man.
Okay.
Just because it shows such fierce allyship.
Yes.
And it shows such devotion, and it doesn't pull any punches.
Yeah.
And it shows how people can be flawed and still be supportive and still unite for a cause.
Right.
And just it's kind of touches on a theme that you see in like some like X-Men comics and movies, right? Like it's like everyone's like, mutants are people and they deserve nice things, but then but there's ones who are very visibly mutants, and things are harder for them. So like, oh, of course you don't mind being a mutant because you just look like a normal person, but you can shoot lightning out of your hands.
Yeah.
Some Illyrians can hide and some can't.
Yeah.
And that's very much sort of like being able to pass for someone in a cishet world.
Yeah.
And it's like that. It's like some people, do you fight for your siblings or do you use your perceived privilege and just have an easier path through life? Mm-hmm. And I think it's an interesting way to examine that it's like, I think, as a, pretty visibly trans person, that really resonates with me, that it's like, there are people I know that are trans and you would never know and they would never tell you.
Yeah, when I'm in high femme mode, you wouldn't be able to know that I'm trans, non-binary.
Yeah. And like, there's, certain like safeties or privileges that come with that.
Yeah.
And it's that, I don't think that specifically has been something that's explored too often.
Yeah.
Like so it's sort of the central cause. And like, but then, like I said, it's the fierce allyship of Pike and the rest of the crew. Like they are so dedicated to helping their friend, and they don't care that she's genetically modified. Like they know that she's a great officer and she's their friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that like Pike goes to this inhospitable planet, he's willing to let his oxygen run out to meet with this lawyer.
He's putting his whole life on the line for her.
Absolutely, and that's, I've watched the episode like 3 or 4 times, and I cry every time.
Aww.
Because it's just like, if I had someone to stand up for me like that, like it's just like and the thing is, it's like, and in the trial, and they're just sort of the way they're questioning it, and why do you do this? And even when they're talking about, you knew this was illegal to be in Starfleet and be genetically modified, and why did you do it? And, she talks about how aspirational it is and how she saw a crew and there's people of all different races and species and wanted to be a part of that and all of this. And it's like, it's fighting for your place in the future.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, I look at aspirational things in the future and I want people like me to be there too.
Yeah.
And so I can't help but take that trial specifically exceptionally personally.
Absolutely, especially in the context of the rhetoric right now that's going on in the world, right? Like, we live in Alberta, and it's no secret that Alberta hates trans people. I shouldn't say all of Alberta, but like, it's no secret that there are certain individuals.
There's a lot of challenges, let's say.
Yes, there's certain challenges that we're facing as trans people in the world, not just here in Alberta. Gender diverse people are at risk of having to be in these very courtrooms and needing people to stand up for them, like they did in that episode, right? Like, so I don't think you're too far off in how you're relating that and how you're observing that. And I would hope that we never get to the point where you do need someone to stand up for you in a freaking courtroom. But you're right. Everybody deserves to have a champion in their corner, whether they're part of the community or they're an ally. And I think that's why I really resonated with that Vulcan philosophy of Kolot Shan, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We need to have all of that diversity to be able to understand each other, to hold space for each other. That's what makes the world turn. That's what gives us our humanity, is that diversity, or our Vulcananity. I don't know what Vulcans would call it.
Oh, they wouldn't call it humanity.
They wouldn't call it humanity, not at all. No, they'd have some sort of logical, emotionless answer. But I love that philosophy. I mean, I have it tattooed. You have it tattooed.
We both do, yes.
And I think that whole philosophy can be applied to so many different things within Star Trek. But outside of the franchise, like that's a good philosophy to live by. It's just good. And so I think it's kind of sad that in the world right now we're seeing so many situations where people could find themselves in criminal settings for being who they are. And
There's not too far from here, people like trans people get their passports seized.
Yeah. And like we just need to be champions, right? We as trans people need champions, and us trans people who have that privilege and we carry that passing privilege or whatever you want to call it, we also need to stick up and support our siblings, you know?
And the thing that I think is really beautiful about that is like is to look out for each other, and even the lawyer who was a childhood friend of Una's did not want to take the case. No. But in the end that she did, because it's all about community and helping each other out. So it was a begrudging thing, and it helped advance her goals as well. But she's like, this is actually going to be good for all Illyrians if we have some win against this policy that Starfleet has. Yeah. And so it was all very greater good for the community, and that kind of makes me think of in the queer community there may be people that, maybe aren't great, or maybe they take some missteps, because a lot of us, we all have traumas that we're healing from, and it all looks different. Yeah. And sometimes we'll make mistakes and stuff like that. And that's kind of in the episode, is there was, a mistake not a mistake, but there's a choice that was made early in life that drove a wedge. Yeah. And that, if we make a choice that maybe our current selves wouldn't agree with, or people that affect don't agree with it, that still that no one's beyond redemption, and that the community won't abandon you.
Yes. Yeah. And that you have your chosen family. They care for you. They can see past all of this, stuff that's supposedly making you lesser than, or that others you, and they don't see you that way. They don't other you, because you're part of them. You are them, right? And just I think the queerness of the episode, the tension between the two characters. There's the lingering hand at the end of the episode where you're like, oh, were they more than friends? Because you get that vibe. There's more than just a broken friendship here. You can feel the tension between the two of them. Yeah. So I think all of the themes in this episode are just so gorgeous. I love it.
So let's skip ahead now to Lower Decks,
which I bet lots of people watching this podcast are like, how is Lower Decks going to work into this? But it does. It really does.
It does.
I swear it does.
and one thing I want to say before we go into Fisher Quest is one thing that I really love is one of my favorite, I'm not even really sure because I actually got together, but I loved Mariner and Jen the Andorian together.
Yes. I forgot about them. Yeah.
They're just a cute couple, and they've got issues and stuff. They've
got issues. Yeah.
For the first time I saw it, I loved that her name was Jennifer the Andorian, and I'm like, okay, I love Jennifer. Jennifer can do no wrong, and then she gets together with Mariner, and I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I love this, and it was done just so casually. Again, it wasn't a big deal that
the sapphic love exists.
A lot of people kind of assume that main characters are straight if they're not in relationships, and it's like, oh no, wait, no, maybe not.
Yeah, no, she hella gay.
Exactly, and it was really cool. So
and that. Their relationship dynamic is it's not because they're queer that they're having these issues. It's just that they're in a couple, and these are normal issues that couples have when you're going through communication, and wasn't in space, queer in space. But so I think I like the way that was handled as well. They have conflict, but it's not a central part of their queerness necessarily. Yeah.
No, but yes, I just wanted to throw.
No, yeah, that was a great one.
I love Jen the Andorian. So. Yeah. Okay, but let's talk about Fisher Quest.
Yeah. So this episode is where we see, the multiverse start to come into play. I'm a sucker for multiverse. I'm a sucker for time travel episodes.
I love multiverse stuff. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. I really liked this episode because this is where we finally get Bashir and Garrick as canon. Granted, Bashir is a hologram, and they're from different universes. They're not from the same universe.
But they're in love, and
they're in love, and they're so sweet.
And they bicker, but they're also sweet. And it's you guys would bicker.
Yeah, and of course Garrick would bicker because it's fun to him.
Yeah, It's a game.
It's a game. But he loves Bashir.
Yeah.
And there's the line of like, I don't care what universe I'm in as long as I'm with you.
Yeah.
And we spend all of DS9 being like, Zial, you're gonna put Garrick with Zial. You're
Garrick's
trying
beard, yeah.
really hard here, but like we're all seeing through
Yeah.
it. You know, like we're all seeing right through that. They tried to push this like cis-normative, heteronormative relationship on the fandom, and the fandom just wasn't having it. Like
No,
not at
they're
all.
like, what is she doing here?
No, they were trying to make it canon that he's straight, but at best it made him bi.
Yeah, like that. That's the thing. Is like from the first time you see Garrick and Bashir on camera together, there is chemistry.
Like I say, my girlfriend messaged me with no context from me, like was watching episodes ahead of where we had been, and was like, yeah, these two, right? Like these two are super gay for each other. And as when she sent the picture, I was like, oh yeah, I knew you would clock that.
Yeah, and like Andrew Robinson, who plays Garrick, has said that that's how I played it.
Yes,
it's like
yeah.
it was intentional. Like I see this guy and that's a handsome guy and I'm gonna want to get with that.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm playing it. But then after a bit, the same person who likes all the cat suits. So he realized that people were picking up on that. And I don't know if he did or not, but then he's like, okay, we're going to cut the scenes with them. We're not going to show these two together because people are picking up on these vibes, and we don't want them to pick up on
Some
these
producer
vibes.
was real mad.
Exactly, and yeah, so then they brought in Zial and like, oh no, Bashir's best friend is O'Brien now, and no one can have a crush on O'Brien, so he's obviously not gay.
yeah. Which, come on.
Yeah,
You can try, but like Garrick and Bashir were meant to be together. I will stand by that. So I love that they made it canon. I love that they really just finally leaned into the gayness of it all, because for me that was where I think I first started to realize, oh, this is okay, DS9 is actually kind of queer coded. So then when I went back and was watching TNG with a different lens, I was able to pick up on more themes I think I had missed the first time I had watched it. Being in a place in the pandemic where you're like in this like weird trauma-y place, I don't think I was really immersed. So I think with my second and third watch throughs of different series, I was able to pick up on these themes a lot more. But with DS9, I was instantly like, okay, this is queer coded as hell, but why aren't we just saying it?
Yeah.
And so when we get to, it takes all the way to Lower Decks.
It was alluded to a lot.
Yes.
And like, are you familiar with the fan script that they did?
No, I don't think I am.
So it was a few years ago. It was during the pandemic, and the actor who played Bashir had a podcast, and sometimes they would do like little reenactments, and they're like, someone had written a script where Garrick and Bashir actually do hook up.
Oh, I didn't know this.
And then so he had the actor who played Garrick come on to the show, and they actually read this, and they did like basically a radio play of this fan script where Garrick and Bashir got together.
BRB, going to Google. Amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, and because both actors were down, we're like,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, there was a lot of gay vibes there.
There was.
and so like it was cool. That happened, I think, and it was so well received for like just like a pandemic podcast thing that he was doing,
Right.
and that it showed that, yeah, it also made you feel like, okay, it's not just a few people in the fandom who feel this way. Like a lot of people feel this way, and it's nice to finally get some payoff. And we finally got the official payoff in Fisher Quest, which was, I think, like the second last episode of.
Yeah,
of
I
Lower
don't.
Decks.
It was way in there. Yeah.
But like, at least we got it.
We got it. We did it. We got there.
We did it.
I feel like all the stans, like myself, who were like, just let them be babes together.
Yeah.
Like it was a moment of success, I think. And I want to think that the fandom has such a like pivotal impact on future episodes, the way they navigate different like contexts, or sorry, different subjects. I like to think that the fans play a good part in that. Maybe I'm delusional, but
Well, they have to listen, and people, there's feedback. Like if there's an episode and then everyone hates it, and all the reviews are like, this is the worst episode, like they're probably listening to that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and you get the people who are, again, we go back to the beginning of the episode where we were talking about the people who are like, Star Trek is so woke now. Like, what's with all this gay crap? I think those people need to be exposed to this, and Star Trek is like agreeing with us finally.
Yeah.
It's not just like a subtle exposure. It's like in your face gay. Sorry, that was right in the mic. In your face gayness. Like it's not as like covert anymore. It's overt. And I think that that's where we need people who hold these like, you know, kind of right-wing, less progressive viewpoints of gender, of sexuality, need to have exposures through fandoms like Star Trek. Something that's like a lifelong passion for so many people. How many people's minds and perspectives can be changed by a show like that, right? Like, I would love
Mine
to
was.
like, exactly. But were you a right-wing,
No.
not right?
No,
So
but
like,
still.
I'd be really curious to see what kind of an impact newer series in the franchise have had, like Discovery, right? I know a lot of people don't like Discovery. It's not people's favorites. As a queer person, it's one of my favorites.
I think more people would be receptive if the Klingons weren't all wet. Like,
I don't even
why do
want
you have to have wet
talk.
Klingons? Sorry to bring up wet Klingons.
The whole first season was a tough watch for many of us. I
Yeah.
almost did not give Discovery a second chance, and I am so glad I did.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I know my experience for coming into it, and you know, you shared a lot about yours as well. Like, for me growing up, I didn't have any out queer or trans people in my circle. Like, there wasn't anyone for me to aspire to or to learn from, or there wasn't anything of that sort. But what I did have, and of all the fandoms I've explored in this podcast and will continue to explore, like, Star Trek was my biggest one. And like, that was the first place I found any community beyond like my block that I lived on. It's the first time I felt community with people that I didn't know personally, or people that I could see, and I'm like, okay, we've got something. Like, it was a first way that I felt connection. And then, like, when I had weird feelings about myself that I didn't understand, and I realized other people having weird feelings that they didn't understand. And like, I say that there's people, if they give me their 3 favorite Star Trek characters, if it's a specific 3 characters, I'm like, you are going to come to the realization you're trans in the next 2 years. Like, there's connections that people have with certain things, and it's just like, you pick up on different themes. And so, like, the first hint of a queer community I found was a queer Star Trek community.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful and wonderful that I was able to find that. And why, like... So I hope it continues to do that, and like, it just always holds such a special place in my heart for that reason. That it's like, that's my first sense with like joining a community of any kind, really.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. So even though I'm like a newer Trekkie, when I felt like I could finally take claim to the term Trekkie, which I think people watching this now will be like, are you? I am
You
at
are,
heart.
like,
At my
come on.
core, I am. I might not know every plot line or all the episodes or every character name, and I might mix my details up.
I'm going to cut you off here for a second. I hope you can continue. But like I said, like, gatekeeping is not what we do.
Yeah.
And you have the passion, you have the joy, and it means something to you.
Yeah.
And if it means something to you, that's what matters.
Yeah, thank you.
But sorry,
One of
continue.
my favorite rappers, who I just went and seen in San Diego, Prof. Big love to Prof. I'm a gumpo. But he, at the show, kept talking because he's been touring for a long time. This has nothing to do with Star Trek, but he had been touring for a while and he was feeling a little like tired. And he made a mistake in one of his lyrics and he stopped. And he was like, I messed up. And then he goes, you know, enthusiasm over perfection. Enthusiasm over perfection. You might not nail everything, but are you enthusiastic about it? That's perfect. So that's my new mantra, enthusiasm over perfection. So yeah, I might not be the most knowledgeable person, but I have enthusiasm.
Well, none of us can achieve perfection anyway, so
It's true.
why is that a standard for anything?
It's true. It's true. A lot of us are, trauma bonded with the idea of perfection, I think.
Like, I've even made a mistake once.
Yeah. Wow. Just one.
Yeah,
Oh,
but-
that's big.
Yeah, like, it's hard for me to admit that, and it's kind of a sensitive subject.
Yes. Thank you
but
for sharing. I will hold that for you.
This is an honest place for sharing. So,
But yeah, like I was saying, like I think just I found a lot of the Star Trek community is queer or trans. Most of the queer or trans people I've had the joy of sharing space with over the last few years, particularly through my drag journey, are massive Trekkies. Like I met you through drag. We had this individual drop by our house the other day and left that lovely little note for us. And I said, oh yeah, this is my cat, Jadzia Dax. And great name. Of course you're a Trekkie, random person on my doorstep. And the allyship that that I see through the fandom. You know, like you were talking about how allyship within the show itself. I think in a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm in, you have that same allyship bleeding over into the fandom. It's not tolerated for transphobia or homophobia in that group. That is like the wholesome posting group on Facebook is really so affirming to queer and trans people who are part of that group.
Bigoted stuff will get you booted.
Yep, they do not tolerate it. They really live by that Kolot Shan, like infinite diversity and infinite combinations kind of philosophy. And I think that like I already kind of was living in that way before I started to discover Star Trek, but having like immersed myself in the franchise, being the fan that I am now, I think like I embody that a little more because of Star Trek, and I'm a little more comfortable in my body and in my transness and my queerness because of Star Trek. And maybe I didn't have the life-altering gay through Sapphic Kiss or something, but I still had my own experiences and my own understandings of myself through watching it as an older adult.
Yeah, and you come through it with your own context and your own timelines, right?
Yeah, and it's something that I love when I connect with other Trekkies who are queer and trans, because it's a little bit of a different conversation than it would be with someone who's an ally, and talking about these episodes where it's the underlying theme or the underlying tone that's not like overtly talked about, and particularly in some of the older series. I think it's lovely to have the opportunity to connect with other queer and trans fans to be able to talk about these ideas, and to have forums like that group on Facebook or like other, I don't know how conventions are. I've never been to a Star Trek convention.
They're fun.
Yeah, but like I'm assuming those places are just as accepting and inclusive as Star Trek wholesome posting is, you know? So I was also in a group for a while there, like a Moogie group, a feminist Moogie core on Facebook, and it was a lot of like gender forward, really progressive people, particularly women and femmes, and feminists who were analyzing the show from that lens. And I really loved being able to engage in that kind of topic as well. So Star Trek is more than just like pew pew, space, exploration.
Well yeah, that's the thing is you talk to people from different demographics, and if they're looking through different lens, or let's just say their default setting, cisgender heterosexual. You ask them to name 6 episodes, they're not picking the same 6 episodes that we did.
No, they're not.
Like these episodes might not even mean anything to them, but there's other things that they resonate with. And that's kind of the beauty of having something that has infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And there's different stories told by different people in different ways, but it's all within the same universe. And there's still all these overarching themes. And I think we're probably at time, so it's probably a good time to wrap things up.
I think that's a good place to end it.
But I want to see if you have any final thoughts you want to give, or if you had any social media plugs you want to do, or let folks know what you're up to, or anything like that.
So I dabble in a bit of drag. You can find me on Instagram, tugs.drag, TUGS, .drag. And I'm open to bookings. I love doing Star Trek drag. I have a couple different numbers that I've already developed, and I'm working on a like Star Trek burlesque number. And yeah, open to talk Star Trek, hit me up, let's chat. I love meeting other Trekkies.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for being here. It's been a wonderful time. And again, I'm your host, Allison Hadley. Thanks for tuning into the Rainbow Connection podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at RainbowConPod. And we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.